Amid uncertainties and transitions, the World Economic Forum, being a platform for various players, could play a great conduit in communicating ideas and even brainstorming about solutions. On that, we have the head of programming with the World Economic Forum. I really wonder, as the organizer of the Summer Davos, how would you be able to really grasp the real theme of the world, the one that is really beneath skin deep, about where the world is heading for? It's difficult, isn't it, during the daily fluffy things going on?
It's difficult because the world is getting more complex and there are just many things happening at the same time. The World Economic Forum is an international organization and not a conference organizer. That means that we are involved in many debates on a year-long basis, and we have a big network to tap into. We have close collaborations with many of the G20 countries. We just signed an MOU with the United Nations 2 weeks ago, so this is our core source of information. So all the things that we do are happening in collaboration with our partners and governments and international organizations.
Multilateralism, of course, is a key word in a way for World Economic Forum, but you know that was quite a buzzword during the G20 summit held in Osaka just earlier. And there was such a debate about whether that word could be put into the final declaration even. So do we have to hide the word, which is in everybody's daily practice?
We don't need to hide this word. Multilateralism is important. There are many challenges that the world can only resolve together. Climate change is one of these examples. We are very much focused on trade tensions and so on at the moment, but there are many problems that don't stop at borders. Climate change is one of these problems, and multilateralism will be needed to address these challenges, in my view.
What do you think? How much being discussed here can infiltrate or be able to feed, provide the nutrition for real policy debate?
So what the World Economic Forum is trying here is not necessarily to, and we don't vote on any laws here, obviously. What we are doing is we want to synchronize people's mind. We want people to get on a common page for decision making. And that's sometimes what's holding back the political process, a lack of consultation, a lack of alignment on what are actually our shared values, what are our shared concerns, and that's something that we're building. We have more than 2,000 participants, we have more than 1,000 participants from business, many of them very high level. It's the most international meeting that we have ever run in China with 70% global participants, and many of them are concerned about topics like cybersecurity.
When you are designing the theme of this year's Summer Davos, you work with your team around the world. You talk to scholars, experts, people in the know, policymakers, even on the background issue. So what are the issues that are on top of their blank paper when you are talking to them?
Well, there are 4 main concerns that we believe are more and more on the mind not only of policymakers but also of business leaders. There's one major concern that is clearly around technology governance, what we said before, and with many of the new technologies maturing from 5G to artificial intelligence, that's one area. Another big area, and we are being reminded of this every day, there's a huge heat wave at the moment in Europe, for instance, is climate change. And more people realize that there are also financial risks attached to that, economic risks to that. The third area that you already mentioned, of course, geopolitical tensions. And then the fourth area are societal tensions, societal polarization, which is something that is happening at the same time as societies are growing, economies are growing. So we have to address this as well. And many of these things are interconnected. You cannot look at one without the other. So those are the 4 areas that we are focusing on, because this is what we're hearing from many of the people we are talking to, that these are their main concerns.
Sebastian, the technology is developing very fast, but will it bend to geopolitics? I guess when I asked this question, everybody knows what I meant. So what do you think? How is that likely to be discussed at this year's Summer Davos, which is focusing on innovation?
Exactly. Technology is, of course, also an underlying factor in some of the geopolitical tensions that we are seeing. At the same time, there are lots of common concerns around technology. So we have just run a survey around how people feel about artificial intelligence. And the concerns that people have about privacy, about machines deciding about our lives, are shared concerns, concerns in China as much as they are concerns in the United States. And we believe that these are areas where we need more collaboration. So on the one hand, there is a risk of fragmentation. There's a risk of different standards. There's a risk around lack of trust or declining trust in the world. But at the same time, I believe that the leaders that we're gathering here understand that some of these challenges can only be solved together. And we want to be a platform for this kind of strategic cooperation, as opposed to just thinking about strategic competition. That's really the core idea of this meeting.
Another thing about the debate these days is about the differences between showbiz and real discussions. We saw that so many times on TV, in the media, on social platforms. How to make sure it's not showtime, but real time. Sebastian.
Well, the lines are of course blurred. We are in a real-time world where everything that one says will be transmitted within a split second everywhere, right? And for us, in a world where things are really, really complex, narratives, telling good stories is sometimes important to help people navigate it, to help people find an anchor, to help people sort of feel anchored somewhere. Because if you don't have that, things fall apart. So showmanship is a sort of a negative word, but you need to have people who give orientation, who have a story, who have a narrative. But at the same time, and that's really, really important, we have to make sure that what is being discussed is anchored in facts. It's anchored in actual truths. It's anchored in research. That, yes, you need to have some sort of narrative that help people understand what's happening, but that narrative needs to be anchored in facts. And this is one area where we oftentimes have narratives without facts. Yes. And that's where narratives are getting dangerous. That's where narratives turn into showmanship. And that is something that we have to work against. And that's why we are bringing so many scientists to a meeting like the World Economic Forum. We need to help scientists become better communicators. And we need to help communicators think a little bit more like scientists. If you lose this bridge, then you have wonderful stories, but there is nothing behind. And then it's getting dangerous.
So it's not the time to burn the bridges, but rather build more bridges.
Oh, absolutely.